Welcome to County Talk, where we tackle the nitty-gritty issues of what's going on in Montrose County and for you as a taxpayer. We're going to dive into some things that you might think are boring, but we think they're very important. So today I'm Sue Hansen. I'm one of your 3 county commissioners, and I'm here with Emily Sanchez, who is our assistant county manager, to talk a little bit about the courthouse. You've probably heard a lot about this in the paper, and we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty issues about the courthouse today. And actually, this is not so boring, but it is very important. So welcome, Emily.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. So can you give us an update on the renovation? I mean, we were seeing it in the paper and all of that, but could you sort of give us an update of what's happening?
Yeah, so we're actually in the really exciting times right now. We've kicked off construction. We had the Golden Sledgehammer event on just Monday. So we got to take out a few frustrations right there on our old courthouse. But that really kicked off the actual renovation of the project. Since that time, you've probably seen the fence go up around the construction site. We have the construction trailer in there. They're starting, demolition and abatement of the project.
Mm-hmm. So there's they actually have to start by cutting down a tree, and the tree has gotten a lot of attention on social media lately. I wondered if you could tell us about this old elm tree.
The poor tree. I think we all, when we knew it had to be cut down, were a little sad. But we were probably going to hurt it pretty bad in the renovation process. First off, it's already impeding infrastructure. We have to reroute the ADA access to the building as we try to make the historic courthouse actually accessible for people. And then we have to daylight some of the interior drains that run from the roof.
You have to daylight? What does that mean?
It means that right now they're going into the sewer system, which is not appropriate. And so we actually are going to drain them to the street.
Okay.
So we have to daylight them or bring them up from underground.
You're starting to sound like a real construction supervisor.
I know, I'm trying to learn.
Daylight them. Okay.
Daylight them.
That's great. So I actually saw some chitter chatter about the tree on Facebook, and people all of a sudden, when you cut down a tree, that was their favorite tree.
It was a good tree.
Yeah, it's a good tree.
I think it's important to note that we didn't or will not cut down the Christmas tree.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That one's permanent as long as it's living. But yeah, our whole objective with this project is to do it in a way that the courthouse is there to serve the community for another 100 years.
Right.
And so if we start with this tree that we know is going to impede the infrastructure in a few years, that's not a great way to meet our goals.
Yeah, that's not a good starting place, is it?
No. So it is sad, but necessary.
Well, I think it's really interesting, and maybe we can talk a little bit about the funding. That's been something we've been talking about for a number of years. I mean, we've been talking about the funding of this for a while. And we started out thinking about a USDA grant, which would have offset some of the cost of this. Can you just briefly explain to folks what that was and the circumstances behind that?
Yeah, definitely. So we had a $7.725 million in congressionally directed funding that was going to be given to us through the USDA.
Mm-hmm. So that's the senator, when the senators give money? Okay.
Yep, but USDA was actually going to, I guess, filter it to us. But in that process, they had so many strings attached to that funding that it actually became unfeasible to do the project. I mean, I know we had lots of meetings where there was just one more hoop to jump through and one more hoop that made the project less and less good for our community. And
big hoop for me was not the where you weren't able to use a local contractor, and we kind of wanted to do that. It kind of ties in with the whole courthouse and everything. So now we have Stryker and Company, local contractor, and so that was one of the things that really bothered me about the USDA thing. Plus, the federal funding just became so onerous. So
I mean, it took control away from the county commissioners. It took control away from the county to really make sure that project went right, and it took the money away from our local contractors.
Right. So so now what? Maybe the listeners would be interested in how we are funding it now.
Yeah. So now the construction portion of the contract is a little over $14.8 million. Actually, at the Golden Sledge event, Scott Stryker gave us some numbers, and let me find those. So he told us that the $14.8 million, an estimated $13 million is from for local contractors and supplies. A little over $1 million will go to the Western Slope beyond Montrose area, and $790,000 will go to the Front Range for some of those specialty items. So it kind of proves that this is going to continue to be a local project, local contractors, local materials. And that's kind of how they did it back 100 years ago and why this building is so important to Montrose.
So maybe you could touch on that a little bit about the historical. What I love about it is the blocks were mined locally, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that. But also the time capsule that's in the corner, which I was all excited about. Maybe we can talk about that too. So let's start with what the local, how the building was constructed originally.
Okay, so back in 1918 is when the community or the county commissioners really decided that they were going to build a building. They wanted something that would be the civic hub for the community, but also, a World War I memorial to recognize their local veterans. And so they put forward a mill levy to actually fund the project. In 1922, then they actually signed the contract with White and Oakey for the general contractors, and they hired William Norman Bowman as the architect. And their budget was small. And so William or Norman Bowman,
probably wasn't small to them.
Well, so
Was
the
it?
original contract was $164,000.
Oh, wow.
So it probably wasn't small to them.
It is now.
It is now. So he really had to leverage the local supplies to make this project even work. So from the exterior sandstone to the interior bricks, the timbers, the gravel, all of that came locally. And that's really what makes this building so important to our town now.
Yeah, and something else is that, don't those bricks, the blocks weigh like
so
thousands?
They were brought down in these huge blocks that weighed between 4,000 and 6,500 pounds, and then they were cut on site. And I was just reading a post from the Historical Society, and Sally gave us a few more details, but they basically built ramps because they didn't have a crane. So they had to build ramps up to that fourth floor, the top floor, to get the blocks up that high. And then they also used the mules to then put the wood timbers or the trusses up in the ceiling. So the mules would pull the timbers up 3 floors on this ramp. Can you imagine?
Wow.
I cannot imagine.
Wow. Maybe we can have, when we do the grand opening, we can have some mules and simulate things.
On the fourth floor.
On the fourth floor, yeah.
Yeah, we'll start looking for that mule for you.
So I remember I want to say it was a year ago that the Masons came and they did a commemoration of the courthouse and of the cornerstone. And then we were talking about the time capsule. So can we, a little bit about the time capsule? I think it's a cool mystery. And
I think the mystery is where the time capsule actually is. But I do, in Sally's post, she told us what is actually in that time capsule. So the life history of Joseph Seelig, a trail map of Montrose County, a silk American flag, the story of the Uncompahgre Valley Project, a roster of county officials, teacher and service clubs, a copy of the September 12th, 1922 Daily Press, a special issue listing pioneers and telephone directories of the area.
Wow.
So it's all in a 10-box behind the cornerstone. So
I'm glad we didn't break through that wall to get that. I was thinking like special gold and treasures.
Well, historical treasures.
Not a list of the commissioners.
Well, we can put your name in the next time capsule.
There you go.
I'll make sure it's buried in there.
Right. That's a great use of that. So I think people might be interested in the schedule and sort of when this might kind of be working along and being done. Do you have an idea for that?
Yeah, so we kicked off February 5th. The tentative completion date is September of 2025. So I think we're still kind of finalizing some of the construction plans, the engineering and mechanical parts of that. I think they're planning to get in there March to really look at the foundation and what's underneath the concrete of the floors. But we'll just kind of keep everybody up to date, but work through that construction process.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see if how many delays we have or if it moves smoothly. Or, when you have an old building like this, you never know what else you're going to find, right? It's like it is like a treasure hunt, and not in the good way probably, but you find old infrastructure and things like that. So it is kind of a mystery even now.
Yeah, so Stryker did do a lot of due diligence, a lot of investigations, but I think they're like, even them are like, okay, we're not quite sure what a 100-year-old building holds for us.
Yeah, I think I just love that I want to just go back to the local contractors because, these are people that in many cases grew up here. You grew up here. It's just it is sort of heartwarming to know that we have people working on it, and when they speak of it so fondly that they are excited that they get to work on it. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's the really neat thing about Scott and the Stryker team is they are as excited about this project as we are. Like they're all in on our goal or objective to make it last another 100 years. And you usually just don't have that buy-in with your contractor. They're just there to do a job and get the money. But Scott is all in, and it feels really good.
It's a heart project, and we have a heart contract.
Yeah.
So that's great. I can't keep looking at the jail on the end. What do you have any idea what's going to happen with the jail, or what thoughts are with that?
So as of right now, it's going to continue to serve the county as it does. We don't have
prisoners in there. Okay, just want you to know.
Well, employees. So no plans to change the old jail as of right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great, I'm really glad I'm a commissioner at this time because, the whole idea of saving old buildings, well, I'm a kind of person that likes to save all kinds of old stuff. And if we had decided to do something other than just save this, I think I would have been heartbroken. And you see across the country that people courthouses that are in disrepair and counties can't afford necessarily to fix them. So I feel very fortunate that we were able to save enough money over the years to be able to fund this through our own general fund.
Yeah. I mean, I think you guys made that hard decision, right? You had to decide what to do with this building. And there is quite value in this project. I mean, beyond the historic, it has the potential to be an anchor for our downtown area, right? It's accessibility. Right now, that building is not really accessible, and we have some of our core services in there in the assessor and the treasurer. And so by bringing this building up to code, having an elevator that reaches all 4 floors, it really will increase our access to citizens. And then energy efficiencies. I mean, it has some period authentic plumbing and heating and electricity in there. And no insulation. So it's like the black hole of energy consumption.
So this way it'll all be updated. Yeah. Everything will be up to code and brand new. And I think that some folks have asked me, are we going to keep it, the feel of an old building? So, with the atrium will now go all the way to the top floor, right? The center.
Well, it'll be just like it is today. And that's one thing, it is a historic building. So we're preserving those elements that everybody notices, right? From the exterior sandstone to the grand staircase, the big columns. When you walk in, the World War I memorial will still be there. The light well that goes up to the top floor, that will all remain. There'll be slight modifications to the railings to bring them up to code, but it's going to look a lot like it did 100 years ago, and that's basically the goal of the project.
Right.
The historic courtroom that you feel pretty cool when you walk in there won't be court anymore. It'll be board meetings, but nonetheless, it'll be preserved as you see it today.
And for me, when you walk into a building that's so magnificent as this, and it still looks pretty good on the outside. I mean, there's some little.
Well, I hope I look that good in 100
years. Yeah, me too. Which is closer than for you, but there's a sense of awe because the old wood and the old windows, and we see some of that marble. It just takes you back.
Pictures.
Yeah, and these guys that. I mean, they must have been so proud to work on this building, and I mean, I'm sure it was probably the best job at that time.
Yeah, a hard job.
But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of history here. It's pretty exciting. And what's next then for the courthouse?
So I think it's important to note that we've moved everybody out. So now the assessor in GIS are at our old Road and Bridge building, so 949 North 2nd Street. And then the treasurer is actually in the old Pioneer Room at Friendship Hall, so 1001 North 2nd. So they're in there, they're functioning, they're doing great. We had actually moved, 2 years ago? We've moved a couple times to make way for this project. So now we're at the Justice Center Annex, which is just south of the sheriff's office.
Which is the frustrating thing for me to be in this building is that it's not as accessible to the public, and county commissioners are elected officials, and so we want to make sure that the public always knows that we're available to talk to them and they can come by anytime. I am really anxious to be able to get into the courthouse to where you actually people can walk up the steps, they can see you, they can talk to you. So for me, that's going to be a real special moment. So
it's going to be so much more inviting. Yeah. And I mean, so when we get back there, we'll have, let's see, the GIS, the treasurer, the assessor will all move back in. And then we'll add the legal team, administration, Board of County Commissioners, and then our veteran service officer.
Right.
So that building will be fully utilized because right now, or before we moved them out, we were only using the bottom 2 floors.
And I think we haven't used the top 2 floors in a couple of decades.
Yeah,
So
since 98.
Yeah. And I think that speaking of the flexibility of our employees being able to, I mean, we've moved a lot of people numerous times. I know we've moved twice.
Yeah.
And we're not done yet. And so, but the fact that people are flexible enough to say, yeah, this has to be done. I know that Rosemary, the treasurer, was waiting for us to sign the contract before she actually moved. She loves that office and has the old vaults in there. So those will still be in there and people can still see those.
Yeah, I think all the old vaults will still remain in place. A lot of the old furniture, which I found out that they spent $17,000 on the original furniture, and a lot of it we still have.
Wow.
And so we'll have the opportunity to put it back in that building.
You can't say the county's not frugal.
Yeah.
Here's your 100-year-old desk.
Hey, come on. But it's still standing.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's one of the things I love about our assessor, Brad Hughes, is that he's really also treasures old things. And if you go into his office, it's like going into a museum. And he was really diligent about categorizing and identifying all the furniture that was older in the building so that he could squander it and we could put it back in there when this is all
he
done.
has tracked every single piece. He knows right where it is.
Yeah.
So,
it's fascinating to go in there
good.
and to even go into his office and see what he has because it's always like, what is that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we should do that on these shows. What could this be?
A traveling podcast.
So something else I want to touch on is just getting back to the location. We'll be in the civic downtown area, but there's going to be some parking challenges for people. So maybe we could talk a little bit about where the construction places will be set up or the construction units or
The fence.
the fence. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is basically blocking off that whole block where the courthouse sits, so including those parking spots that are right in front of the historic courthouse. And so there will be parking challenges, I think, especially for the movie theater on Friday and Saturday nights. But it also keeps everybody kind of safe from what is going on because we'll be trenching a lot of new water lines, irrigation for the landscaping. And by blocking all that area off, we're just protecting everybody from any kind of accident.
Right. So I won't be able to park there for the movie anymore. We'll have to.
No. So the clerk's parking lot's still available.
Right.
So you just have to work with the elections parking there.
Yeah.
As that comes in.
Well, I think we forget how much parking there really is around the place. So,
Yeah.
What else would you want to talk about with regard to the courthouse that's notable? I was poking around on social media, and some people were. I love that people weigh in and say, here's what happened to me in the courthouse. And, we haven't talked about the cycle of life that happens in an old courthouse. That's where you got your birth certificate. That's where you got married. That's when, your whole cycle of life happens in that courthouse. And someone was talking about that the 4-H used to meet there. I don't know, do you remember that as a kid?
I don't know that. I never met there. I definitely know that the veterans, they used to meet there a lot. And I mean, that kind of goes back to our core services, right? The assessor, the treasurer, I can't imagine. Rosemary is probably really looking forward to September 2025.
I bet she is. Well,
she probably has a calendar counting down the days.
Yes.
I don't blame her.
I think we all want to get back to, it'd be nice that there's not this musical buildings kind of a thing going on. So I'll be excited about that too. We talked about who's moving in. Is there anything else that we'd like to talk about with regard to the courthouse for people?
I think just staying that we're still on the same theme that they were 100 years ago. I think like at the dedication ceremony on December 7th, the commissioner then, Joe Hartman, stated, this building is yours, built with your money by you as taxpayers and citizens and largely out of Montrose material. And it is basically the very same theme today. Yeah. And so I think that is important.
Just like how Scott Stryker feels about that his team gets to work on this, I imagine the men that we saw in the picture that had if you put that up there, they were probably very proud too. This was the largest building in Montrose. It was a grand structure. It was a very special day to have that courthouse be completed in 1923.
1923.
Right. So just a few years after the Gunnison Tunnel. So
Yeah.
We have a rich history here in Montrose, and this courthouse is really a big part of that. So
Yeah. And Scott, he's so he is definitely into the history part. He is actually trying to find the logo for White and Oakey, the original contractors, to put on their construction helmets, on their hard hats, so that they had Stryker and that logo.
Oh, is that right? That's
so
cool.
I think
Well,
that's a neat.
actually, on the staircase, there's Oakey. The names are written on there.
Yeah.
Do you remember seeing that?
No, I don't. I'm going to have to go look now.
So yeah, evidently when they had manufactured the metal and they put the names Oakey and what's the other
White
gentleman?
and
White and Oakey.
White and
It's
Oakey.
actually on there. So
Yeah.
perhaps that was how they identified it when they picked it up. So
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Unless there was some kind of graffiti artist in there doing some
100 years
some
ago.
mischief. Yeah, exactly. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us today
Yeah,
about
no
the
problem.
courthouse. And I want to thank the taxpayers because everything the county does here is because the taxpayers pay their taxes. And that's why we sort of brag about that. We try to focus on core services, the things that really matter, the things that people want, roads, bridges. They want responsible government, and we try to deliver that. So I hope you learned more about the courthouse today. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, you can reach us at our website or email, countytalk@montrosecounty.net. Until next time, we're going to have other topics as we move along, and want to thank Emily for taking the time and doing all the research. And you know so much about the courthouse. It's really I'm glad to have you on board. So thank you.
Yeah,
for
super
being
excited to be part of this.
Yeah, thank you.